The bad news continues to get worse for your Golden State Warriors as they have lost their fourth straight game last night to the Phoenix Suns. And to be honest with you, there might need to be major changes, not only to this rotation, but potentially to this roster. That's what we're going to talk about on this edition of Warriors Today by Chat Sports. Thank you all so much for joining me on today's show. Guys, before we get into what's been going wrong with the Golden State Warriors and kind of my gripes with the team, what I've seen over the past couple of games, I want to hear from you guys first. What do you think the biggest issue is for the Golden State Warriors at this point? Is it the bench scoring? Is it the injuries? Is it the lack of a trade that they made over the summer? Is it the rotation is too much? I mean, what is it? Let me know down in the comment section what you guys think, and we'll get started with today's show where we really start diving in with, what the rotation issues are, right? Golden State, over the past couple of games, has tried to deploy different combinations, right? And Steve Kerr has admittedly said that maybe, this deep rotation isn't something that can necessarily be sustainable and something that necessarily gets Golden State in a position to contend in this Western Conference, right? Because if you look at the last 4 games for Golden State, 104-94 to the Spurs. I mean, a bunch of these games, you're not scoring enough points to win basketball games in 2024, 2025. 94 points against the Spurs. Yeah, you score 120 against the Nets, but you give up 128 to a Nets team that didn't even have Cam Thomas. What are we doing? I actually think Cam Thomas might have gotten hurt in that game, but regardless, you didn't have Cam Thomas for a full game. You didn't have Cam Johnson for a full game. I mean, Brooklyn was missing some of their best scorers, and they put up 130 on you. I mean, just not ideal for Golden State. Then we're getting blown out for most of the game against the Thunder. You make a fake comeback, and it just was too little too late at that point. And then the Suns game, I mean, yeah, Golden State found themselves down, 17 points at certain points in this game, nearly 20 points. And they tried to claw back at the end. They had a chance, but just couldn't hit enough shots at the end of the day. And, the biggest gripe with this rotation is that it doesn't really allow players to get into a rhythm, right? When you're a guy like Lindy Waters, right? Or a guy like Moses Moody, who's, not always guaranteed to play every single night. And you go out there and you're getting up and down, you're doing your cardio, you're hitting maybe a shot or two and whatnot. But in the back of your mind, you're not really ever getting yourself in a rhythm because you're always thinking about that guy over your shoulder. You're always thinking about that guy on the bench breathing down your neck, whether or not Steve Kerr is going to sub you out or not. So I don't think that this Golden State Warriors rotation right now is sustainable. I don't think they can win more ball games or become the word is continuity, right? What NBA teams need to do at this point is build up the chemistry, build up the continuity so that when it gets time for May, they have an established pecking order. They know what to do in different situations. Golden State, yeah, the great thing is they can throw you a lot of different situations, but at the end of the day, there needs to be a little bit of consistency. And I just don't think that you can run a 13-man rotation. Why in God's name is Pat Spencer playing in the first quarter of this Phoenix Suns game? I know Steph is banged up. I know other guards on this team are banged up. But at the end of the day, you cannot have 13 guys out there. It just doesn't create consistency at all. And Kerr knows this. He said last night in the postgame that we got to think about shortening this rotation. We got to think about who is necessarily going to be the guys that we run day in and day out. I'll tell you right now, it better not be Pat Spencer. I better not see any more Pat Spencer in the first quarter. I think he's a hard-working player. I think he's a smart basketball player. I mean, the guy went to Northwestern. He's a genius. But come on. What are we doing here? Is Pat Spencer going to be the guy that we want taking, facilitating the offense for long stretches? I really don't think so. And, the issue with this whole thing is, yeah, the rotation was great before this skid. Because the bench was scoring at a really high rate and the bench was shooting really efficiently. Buddy Hield has not been the same player that he was to start the season. And this next guy I'm going to talk about has also not been the player that he was when he first got this role coming off the bench. Does Jonathan Kuminga just stink? I've asked this question multiple times. This isn't the first time I've asked this question. That's not a good thing. I mean, Jonathan Kuminga over the past 4 games is 18 for 51. It's less than 40%. He hasn't even shot 40% in any of these 4 losses. And honestly, that can be attributed to the fact that Golden State's losing these games. Jonathan Kuminga was thought of to be one of the, focal point scorers this season. Started out in the starting lineup. Kerr moves him to the bench, but Kerr had said multiple times that we want JK to be the scorer off the bench. And he actually said that he wants to get him more minutes with Stephen Curry and Draymond Green. Well, the minutes that he shared with Stephen Curry and Draymond Green at the beginning of the season came in lineups that didn't really feature a whole lot of spacing. You're going to have to see Jonathan Kuminga and Draymond Green necessarily running the 4 and the 5 out there, so you just have enough spacing and enough shooting out on the court to survive. I mean, I just don't think that Jonathan Kuminga it's just bad news, man, because you think about what Golden State wants out of him. They wanted to pay the guy $35 million this offseason. They wanted to pay him $35 million. And he wanted a max contract. Thank God his hopes were so high that he could earn a max contract, because if Golden State even gave him $35 million a year, I'd call it an overpay at this point. I call it a terrible deal, to be quite honest with you, because the guy can't score. He can't shoot, can't dribble, can't pass. I don't really know what Jonathan Kuminga does really well, aside from cutting to the rim and finishing through contact, which, they're great skills and they're valuable skills. But at the end of the day, for a Golden State Warriors team that passed on trading for Paul George and passed on trading for Lauri Markkanen so they could keep Jonathan Kuminga, it's just not necessarily something that I was happy with at the time, and it's not something that I'm happy with right now. And the other thing that I'm not happy with right now, as far as if we're talking about how Steve Kerr wants Jonathan Kuminga to play with Stephen Curry and Draymond Green, well, play Stephen Curry more. I understand that Steph's going through knee bursitis. I don't really know what that is a whole heck of a lot. And neither really does Steph. He says it's a new injury to him. So the conundrum that we have here, right? Stephen Curry needs to be in a spot where he's the focal point of this offense. He's the go-to scorer. I know defense is key on him. I know they send doubles, and it allows him to be more of a facilitator. But at the end of the day, what does Stephen Curry do best? He puts the ball in the cup. And this Golden State Warriors team goes too long of stretches where they don't put the ball in the cup. Steph's got to be playing more. And I understand that he's old. I understand that he is getting up there in his NBA career, and you want to preserve him as much as you can. If Golden State is to go make a playoff push, you want him to be healthy for that entire run. But are they going to get to that run if they don't play him enough right now? If he's sitting out these games, I know he's banged up. I get it, but he's got to be out there. Well, lineups without Stephen Curry on the floor are not productive for Golden State. They're just not good, guys. And if Steph doesn't get healthy soon, and I shouldn't say healthy because he is playing, but if he doesn't get to the point where he's feeling 100% every single night and he's not taking days off, aside from maybe a back-to-back here and there, things could go bad for this Golden State Warriors team. They could get worse than the position that they're in right now. They were just the first seed in the West a couple weeks ago, and now they're down to the 4th or the 5th, and I think it's only going to get worse if Stephen Curry isn't playing the consistent minutes that he needs to be playing in order to keep this Golden State team and their heads above water. So those are my gripes so far, and next up we're going to talk about the changes that Golden State might need to make, because to be honest, I don't know if they can win a championship with this current group and this current roster and this current rotation that they're trotting out night in and night out right now. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, I got to get you guys to subscribe to the channel. We're covering Golden State like nobody else on YouTube all season long. Make sure you are subscribed. Go down below, hit that big red sub button, turn your notifications on, and set them to all. So anytime that we post Golden State Warriors news here on the channel, you will be notified and you will be locked in with us as your number one stop for Golden State Warriors news and rumors all season long. Lock us in as your go-to spot for Warriors coverage. And we'll get on with the rest of today's show in just a moment, because I also got to talk about our proud sponsor, Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports platform with over 10 million active members. And you guys can get hooked up today with $50 free in your account by using our promo code CLNS when you download the Prize Picks app. It's so easy to, you also have to place your $5 entry to receive that $50, but it's guaranteed. You don't even need to win that entry. Now you might be asking, Tyler, you're so confusing. How do you even place an entry on Prize Picks? It's not confusing. Trust me. All you guys got to do is pick 2 or more players in their stat projections and just click more or less. It's so simple. I'll show you guys a little bit of an example, because before the season, I decided to place a Prize Picks that would take us all year long. And here's what it is. Before the season, they gave you season-long projections. I took Stephen Curry to have more than 26.5 points per game. Maybe that's why I'm a little angry that Steph isn't becoming more of a focal point for this Golden State Warriors team in the scoring column, because he needs to get those buckets up for my Prize Picks. Zachary Rizache, less than 10.3 points per game. He's actually surprising a little bit a couple of people there in Atlanta, and solid 3-and-D wing in his first year, the #1 overall pick. I wasn't too high on him, though. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, more than 30.6 points per game. He's been cooking the last couple of games, so with that being said, you could tail me, you could fade me. Just make sure you go and do it at Prize Picks. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Make sure you download the Prize Picks app and use that promo code CLNS to get $50 for free when you place your first $5 entry. You don't even need to win to receive the $50. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Okay, the Golden State Warriors need to shorten this rotation. I've already covered that in the previous portion of today's show. Golden State needs to tighten up this rotation because there's just not enough bench production at this point, and you need to get guys into enough of a rhythm where they can become productive on a game-to-game basis. So with that being said, if you tighten up the rotation and you take some guys out, you're going to have to look at making a move because you can't. There's too much talent on this Golden State Warriors team. There is a reason that Steve Kerr was playing 13 guys against Phoenix last night because there's a ton of talent on Golden State's roster. And last night, Moses Moody and Kyle Anderson didn't even see minutes for Golden State in the second half. Kevon Looney was the only bench player that had a positive plus-minus. So you have to be able to shorten this rotation up and get these guys in spots where they can create a little bit of continuity for themselves individually, and that'll just help the team overall. So with that being said, Golden State probably has to make a trade at some point to not only, kind of let these guys who aren't going to be in the rotation anymore blossom in some other location, but also address some holes that you have on your team, because that's what the big question is here about Golden State making a trade is how do they make one? What do they even address in this scenario? Because clearly they have a hole in the front court. The size is not always something that Golden State can match up with on a game-to-game basis. Think about when they match up with the Clippers and Ivica Zubac just dominates down low. Yeah, you're going to get some spot great starts from, Trayce Jackson-Davis and Kevon Looney against those guys, but it's not going to be every day. Think about the Lakers. Trayce Jackson-Davis in the preseason, I know it's preseason, but he got abused by Anthony Davis down low. It was not good. Not good at all against a really skilled offensive big like that. Nikola Jokic, we're playing him soon, and it's going to be one of those situations where I'm very scared of how Golden State's bigs are going to play against Nikola Jokic. Historically, they haven't been good, and they need to address something like that in the front court. But they also need to address secondary scoring. Like, Andrew Wiggins has come along phenomenally over the past couple of games, but at the end of the day, I try to talk myself into it, but is Andrew Wiggins going to be the second best scorer if Golden State wants to win a championship? I'm not so sure. So what do they go out and address when you're looking for a trade like this? Do they address the size? Do they address the scoring? Or do they address a little bit of a mixture of both? That's the big question that we're all thinking about. But on the flip side, you also have to think, what kind of player can Golden State get for the players that they have on their team right now? I mean, obviously, they would look to include first-round draft capital in any deal that they make to sweeten the pot. Because at the end of the day, who has trade value on this Golden State Warriors team? Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski. These are guys who have significantly diminished their trade value since they were dangled over the summer for guys, all-star level players. I can't believe it. Every time I watch Brandon Podziemski play basketball, and I'm not saying he's a bad basketball player. Some days he is a bad basketball player, but I'm not saying overall that he is a bad basketball player. But, man, I just think about what Lauri Markkanen could be doing in this offense if Golden State just decided to play ball with Danny Ainge and the Utah Jazz. And they actually would have won the trade. They would have won it by a mile. They would have won it by a million miles. Lauri Markkanen is 7 tiers above the player that Brandon Podziemski is. And that's not a knock to Podziemski. It's just facts. A 7-foot shooter who can space the floor and play solid defense for Golden State. That would be phenomenal on this team. That would address the size and the scoring deficiencies that Golden State has right now. But they can't do it anymore because they didn't do it over the summer. Lauri Markkanen got a contract extension. I know a lot of you guys really hate when I'm talking about these trade rumors, but at the end of the day, Golden State should have made the deals. Like, we know this. Golden State should have made the deals. At the end of the day, I mean, I think Golden State's ceiling is capped with this group. How do you expect to win when you thought of a guy like Brandon Podziemski and you thought of a guy like Jonathan Kuminga as players who could take you and usher you into this next era of championship level Golden State Warriors basketball? Because if they didn't think that those guys were able to push this Golden State team into championship status, then they would have made those deals for all-star players. They would have, but they believe that these guys could be those kind of players. And so far, it just hasn't looked like they can be. And clock is ticking for guys like Steph. Clock is ticking for guys like Draymond Green. They deserve respect, and they deserve the dignity to go out there and compete for a big-time championship. And I know I'm saying this as if the Golden State Warriors aren't fourth in the Western Conference right now, but they're skidding, and I'm upset about it. Now, as far as any trade rumors possibly go, there's no names out there right now for Golden State. I know we've reported on Cam Johnson, but that really hasn't blossomed into much. I know there's been reported interest in him over the summer, but have they circled back on that? It doesn't seem like it. There hasn't been a name specifically. There hasn't been any stars that have come out and requested trade by any means. So it's going to be tough. Like, a lot of guys who you thought could have been dangled in trades either have signed extensions like a Lauri Markkanen or a Paul George, or a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns who's already traded to New York. Like, there are minimal big names right now that could be dealt. The Bucks are starting to play better, so obviously Giannis is going to be traded midseason. They've already said they're not going to trade Giannis midseason. They're trying to improve their secondary scoring aspect. So a trade partner is going to be hard to find. Maybe it's something more marginal that addresses size and scoring in the front court, like a Jonas Valanciunas from the Washington Wizards. He can be traded in a few weeks. I expect after December 15th, Golden State is a little bit more active, and we start hearing a couple more names churning in the rumor mill for Golden State to be making a deal. So with that being said, I want to hear what you guys have to think. What is your confidence level in the Golden State Warriors right now? Scale it for me, 1 to 10. It doesn't look like they're going to be making a trade anytime soon. So the roster that we have and the rotation that we have, well, maybe not the rotation, but the roster that we have in stone right now is going to be the one that we're taking into likely the new year at the earliest. So let me know with this group right now, what's your confidence level in what Golden State their championship aspirations? What's your confidence level in the overall output of this team right now? Let me know down in the comments section by scaling it 1 through 10. So with that being said, wrapped up today's show by looking at the next 4 games for Golden State because they're tough. They're tough. Denver, a mismatch in the paint with Nikola Jokic. A total mismatch. The Rockets, they got big time talent. They're playing really, really well right now. Prince Sengun, Jalen Green playing really, really well. Fred VanVleet, like they got guys. They could score on that roster. Think about it. Golden State was fighting for a play-in spot with the Houston Rockets last year. They've only gotten better. And then you got back-to-back games against the Timberwolves, who, they just ended their losing streak. They're starting to maybe find a little bit of their stride. You got to be able to take at least 2 to 3 of these games here, because after these 4 games, Golden State potentially could be getting a little bit more basketball to be played in the NBA Cup when they get to the knockout stage, as they are 3-0 in their group right now in the Western Conference. So we'll see what Golden State has to do to end up getting to that point. It looks like they'll end up winning their group, or at least getting one of the 2 wildcard spots there in the West. So more basketball for your Golden State Warriors and more time to find some continuity and the right rotation for Steve Kerr that is going to be able to take this team to necessarily the spots that they need to be in order to contend in this Western Conference. And I know I've been rambling a bunch today. I just wanted to come on here and talk about the state of the Golden State Warriors right now. I just don't think they're in the best spot possible that they need to be in order to win a championship. And maybe I'm crazy for having that opinion, but you can hit me up on Twitter about it. You can bitch and moan at me on Twitter about it if I'm a clown, if I'm saying stuff that you don't particularly like about the Golden State Warriors. Let me know down on Twitter at Smitty@CS. We'll see you guys in the next one. Let's go Dubs.